Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of More to Explore, where we keep you up to date with everything happening here at explore.org. And today we're featuring our partner at the Institute for Wildlife Studies here on our West End nest, but it looks like our nesting pair is up on a different cam. So here's on the West End nest. Thank you all for joining for us. Let's get right to it. My name is Brian Bird, and I'm joined once again by explore.org's resident naturalist, Mike Fitz. Mike, good afternoon.
Hey, Brian. Glad to be here. Happy to be along for the ride once again. And if you're new to explore.org, welcome to the community. And of course, welcome back to everybody who has joined us before. We are the world's largest live nature cam network with about 200 live cameras all over the world. We're curious to know what cams you have been watching or are looking forward to watching this week, so you can let us know in the comments. And also, if you have questions for us during the program today, drop those in the comments. We'll try to answer a few of them. I think we'll have time today. But as Brian mentioned, we are looking at the West End cam right now. This is the current resident pair. This is on Catalina Island in California. And this has been a site an eagle territory with a lot of drama over the last year. We're going to talk about that during the interview that we have in just a minute. But before we get to that, I want to mention that the recovery of bald eagles in North America is one of the greatest conservation success stories of the last 100 years. While bald eagles are no longer considered threatened in the United States, the effort to protect them never really ends, even as eagle populations continue to grow. It requires a collective dedication to secure their future on a rapidly changing planet. The Institute for Wildlife Studies is a nonprofit organization dedicated to gathering the information necessary to maintain biodiversity and viable populations of all species, as well as enhance our understanding of the animals with which we share our world. They were instrumental in the restoration of bald eagles on the Channel Islands in California. So if you enjoy watching the bald eagle cams on explore.org out on the Channel Islands, we really do have their work to thank for our enjoyment. And their work to study and monitor wildlife in the Channel Islands is ongoing. And to talk about that and their current fundraiser and the opportunity to name the resident female eagle at the West End Territory on Catalina Island. So I think maybe I could, Brian, the webcam audience will let me know if I'm wrong, but I think that might be the bird on the right. Not 100% sure. But anyway, if you want to name the resident female eagle on the West End Territory, we'll have some details about that in the interview. And to learn all about that and a little bit more, I spoke with Erin Weiner, who is the Eagle Project Lead for the Institute for Wildlife Studies. Here is our conversation. Erin, great to speak with you. Thanks for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So let's start off with talking about your nest adoption challenge. It's happening right now, but I'd like to learn a little bit more about what it is and how long it'll last and what's your goal for it.
Yeah. So every year, the Institute for Wildlife Studies hosts our annual Nest Adoption Challenge fundraiser. This year, the dates are from March 4th to June 2nd. And the idea is basically it's 3 months of fundraising engagements. We do some educational programming through our social media, stuff like this, and then challenges that coincide with the bald eagle breeding season. So some examples of the types of things we do for the fundraiser. The big thing it's centered around is adopting a nest. So we have all these territories of breeding bald eagles out on the Channel Islands. And for many years now, we've allowed donors to donate to support essentially the Eagle program and give names to those chicks. We also do stuff like Q&As with me. We have drawings. We do little challenges. Like right now, we're running a voting and election to name one of the new birds out at the West End. More on that later. But generally, the goal is to raise awareness about the work that IWS does with the Channel Islands eagle population and help raise funds to continue our management program.
Yeah, I'm curious about how you use those funds. How does that money help with the animals that we see on the explore.org cams?
Yeah. So the animals we see on camera, like Chase Chilin, Jack and Audacity, those are our ambassadors for a population of about 60 bald eagles that spans 5 Channel Islands. That estimate was made as of 2022. And the project to monitor this population has been completely donor funded since 2024. So all of that money is put towards ongoing monitoring and research of the population as a whole. What we're doing is we're out there conducting foot surveys of these breeding territories, trying to establish the number of breeding territories that are active on the islands, the portion of nesting pairs that are successfully raising chicks. And we're looking for year-to-year growth in these numbers. And we've been doing this for almost 45 years now. And it's a really great long-term monitoring project, which we can use to essentially detect concerning developments in the population. So if we're seeing abnormally high rates of mortality, we could maybe see, determine whether intervention would be needed in the future. So this work is really critical to maintaining that population, to allowing us to mount any rapid response that's necessary.
That's really interesting, especially because if things were to go wrong and you didn't have a baseline from decades in the past, you wouldn't necessarily have something to compare it to. And I want to hear about like some of the other projects that IWS is working on. But before that, I also want to get your perspective on some recent events at the West End Eagle Nest on Catalina Island. That's been like a scene, a place of drama for a lot of webcam viewers over the last 14 months, really, because we've seen so much turnover among eagles there. There have been several different birds that have tried to stake their claim on the territory. And eventually a male bird nicknamed Lee and an unidentified female established control earlier this winter. And then when eagles compete for territory so vigorously, I'm wondering if this could be a sign of success in a sense. Maybe it could mean that the population has grown to a point where nesting territories are saturated or at least there's just a very high demand among eagles for those places. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's encouraging. Clearly, there's a lot of eagles out on the West End. Turnover, being an issue of there being too many eagles as opposed to too few, which was the issue for many years. With the turnover, it may be that we're seeing some jockeying for dominance among these like younger birds. On the whole, the birds that we have seen, and there has been quite a rotating cast, seems to be on the younger side. Either we can identify them and know that, like, for example, Lee is like a 5-year-old bird, or we can sort of deduce from their tags, like they have black or brown splotching still in their white feathers, which generally indicates they're younger birds. So it's not as encouraging, and seeing the rise in this like floater class is generally something that suggests that maybe we are reaching some spatial saturation, some carrying capacity out there. Overall, though, there's still many active breeding territories in other, like across the islands. So while it's, I think, been a source of constant drama for our viewers, it's not concerning from a population viability standpoint.
And I like that idea of a floater class of bald eagles that are out there trying to find their place, trying to find their own territory. I'm gonna steal that for other programs that I write too. And to the surprise of many, Lee's partner laid an egg on March 15th. I don't think a lot of us were sure if they would have any eggs because they established themselves on this territory a little late in the nesting season for eagles in the region. But they had a single egg. The day after it being laid, though, on March 16th, a raven took advantage of just a few minutes inattentiveness from the eagle pair. And so the raven made a meal of the single egg. We know that Lee, the male of the pair, hatched in 2022, so he's a young bird. We're not sure of the female's age, but she may be relatively young as well. Can you maybe talk about how well eagles learn from these experiences? What is their early life as parents like, and how do they learn from maybe the mistakes they make during their first few nesting seasons? How might that translate into success later on?
Yeah. So there's been some research conducted into this, and generally what it has shown is that the age of the breeding pair is related to breeding success, with more experienced pairs generally being more successful than those younger pairs. And that's really a matter of experience. I think there's a lot of chatter on the webcam where it seemed like the Lee and the female were even confused about what had happened. Like they had this egg and they were like, where did that come from? So I don't know, like you said, Lee is young, he's 5 years old, maybe. The female still has those tags that I was talking about. So brown splotching on her head and tail, which really suggests that she's perhaps like even younger than Lee, maybe 4 years old. I think that if we give them time, they'll figure it out.
And as we record this, the Institute for Wildlife Studies is having an election to name the Western female. How can people participate in that?
Yeah. So we, like I mentioned, the whole concept of the Nest Adoption Challenge was this process of adopting and naming eaglets. So it's something we've always centered in our campaigns. This year, we're naming the West End female. We already held a nomination period where you could donate to put forward a name. Right now, for the next week, you can vote on all of those nominated names. So there's 8 names. And voting is totally free. So if you visit iws.org and you go to our Nest Adoption Challenge page, or if you go through our Facebook or our Instagram, you can access our link tree. There's links to voting there, and you can cast your vote. Everyone gets 1 vote for free. And then if there's like a name that really speaks to you, or there's 2 names and you can't decide between which one you like better, additional votes can be made with each $10 donation to the Institute for Wildlife Studies.
Well, that's I think a good way to maybe game the process. If you want to, maybe there's a millionaire or billionaire out there who's like, you know what, I'm going to donate $100,000 so I can get this eagle named. Who knows?
If you want, yeah, go for it.
The Institute for Wildlife Studies has done such, kind of amazing work for the bald eagles in the Channel Islands region, starting with like a restoration effort a few decades ago, and maybe even before then with monitoring of the population out there. Where do you think the bald eagle population in the Channel Islands would be without sort of like the human intervention and the work of IWS and its partners to sort of jumpstart the recovery process? Because that's what we're seeing today. This fairly healthy population of bald eagles in the Channel Islands. But I'm wondering, like, without the human intervention efforts that happened before, where might the population be?
Yeah, that's a great question. This population in particular faced a lot of challenges to its recovery. Stewardship of this population by people, particularly the researchers of IWS, played a huge role in its ability to recover and for these bald eagles to be able to reestablish into this part of their former range. In other areas of California, bald eagle recovery has happened more passively. So like populations in like Sacramento area, those dispersed in naturally. But they didn't require any release of eagles. So in the early stages of our project, we were releasing eagles, and then we moved into a phase of active nest manipulation. And that's because the eagles and the bald eagles on the Channel Islands faced this significant challenge of high levels of environmental DDT. So there's a lot of DDT contamination in the ocean. It was preventing the eagles from nesting without our intervention. So we, released them onto the islands, and when they started breeding naturally, the eggs were breaking. And we had to intervene. We had to, go into the nest, swap out the eggs with decoys, incubate those eggs in facilities, introduce more birds, just all to support the population and making sure that it stayed viable. So there's immense amount of time, money, effort that went into maintaining this population from the late 80s to the early 2000s. We're just now seeing bald eagles begin to return to Southern California in meaningful numbers. Once again, this has been largely through natural dispersal. So, and that's partly due to the fact that there's a mature and large population on the Channel Islands. So we have individuals from the Channel Islands who've come across the channel to mainland and Southern California and set up territories. I think the takeaway from this work is that nature will find its own way when it's left to its own devices. But the role of humans in the relationship between species, at least as I see it, is to use our big innovative brains and ability to organize ourselves around a cause to help nature along its way. And that's what IWS has done and continues to do with the bald eagles, what the modern conservation movement seeks to do with all species and ecosystems, and what First Peoples have done for generations.
Yeah, and the eagles aren't your only project, right? So
Yeah.
what are some of the other works or some of the other projects that IWS works on and supports?
Yeah. So we have a number of really exciting projects, and the full list can be found at our website, iws.org. Many of our projects are grant funded, but some of our most impactful work is privately funded. So like our Bald Eagle project. And a couple of highlights of our privately funded work. We have a mountain lion research project in Northern California, looking at their space use, especially in concert with like the movements of pronghorn, the occupancy of pronghorn, which is North America's only native antelope. We are trying to pilot a wolverine reintroduction to the Sierra Nevada. So wolverine's kind of like a mid-sized scavenger species that used to be common to the Sierra Nevada, but went extinct. So we're trying to bring that species back, which is a long process, but is so rewarding. We also do a lot of work with amphibian biodiversity surveys in the Lost Coast. And again, all of this work is privately funded. So donations go towards making these things a reality, taking care of these species.
And just a couple more questions for you, but how did you start your career working with wildlife? And if there's somebody who's watching or listening, maybe a student who wants to help conserve nature and animals, what advice might you be able to give for them?
Yeah. What I'll say is that I have one story of a spectrum of stories. And to any student listening, if you identify with some of the things that I have done, then that's great. And if you don't, then that doesn't mean that wildlife isn't for you. But for me particularly, I pretty much always wanted to work in wildlife, specifically conservation. I think I attribute that largely to a couple of things. I grew up around discussions of climate change and biodiversity loss, and that was really impactful, especially as I was growing up and spending time in nature, cultivating a deep connection to it through hiking, camping, outdoor education, and just being, I think, growing up in the Bay Area, I really saw science as the best way to make a positive impact. So from there, I went on to get a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in biology. So I have both undergraduate and advanced degrees. And along the way, I picked up research experience wherever I could find it. So, and that hasn't really been related to what I'm doing now. I have looked at anthropogenic stressors, so light and noise on songbird species. I had the wonderful opportunity to intern at a lab at UC Santa Cruz doing pinniped acoustics and physiology research. My master's thesis was on wildfire and spatial ecology of mammals. So really just, I think, enthusiasm, comfortability being outside, especially if you want to be a field researcher, picking up those research experiences, even if you don't see how all the dots are connected, like diligence pays off.
Well, thank you for that answer. Lots of things to consider if you're starting your career. And before I let you go, Erin, can you please remind us about the fundraiser event that IWS is hosting right now? How can people contribute?
Yeah. So the fundraiser, again, it started on March 4th and it's going to run until June 2nd, June. You can donate at iws.org or through our social media platforms. So IWS social media, so our Facebook and our Instagram, is the best way to keep up with announcements, challenges, and other engagements throughout the duration of the fundraiser. So I recommend anyone who's interested, go check this out.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to join us. I'm looking forward to learning more from you in the future and learning more about the bald eagles out on the Channel Islands.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And thanks again to Erin Weiner, the Eagle project lead for the Institute for Wildlife Studies. If you want to learn more about their work at the Institute for Wildlife Studies, iws.org is the place to go and to donate as well. And of course, if you want to watch birds like this, go to explore.org/eagles at any time. We did have one audience question that I saw that came in pretty early in our program, and it has to do with eagles out on the Channel Islands. And this question came in from Faithfully Irish, who wrote, "Can you please explain about eggs that break during labor and what happens if a partial egg is still inside the eagle, as in Audacity's case last night?" So I think I can really only maybe speculate on what's going on here. This would be a really great question to ask Erin, however, during a program that we have scheduled on April 15 at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. So we're going to do basically like a bald eagle play-by-play with Erin and the Institute for Wildlife Studies on that day. So mark it on your calendar. We'll have more info about it coming up, in future More to Explore programs. But I think Audacity is experienced, and she has experienced for a number of years, some sort of physiological condition, maybe, or hormonal condition that prevents many of her eggs and most of her eggs from really for forming very strong shells. No one seems to be sure what that is. I know Dr. Peter Sharp, who was affiliated with the Institute for Wildlife Studies, he is retired now. He thought that it wasn't DDT or DDE related. I don't know if anyone is sure, however. Dr. Sharp was always careful to note that other eagles in the Channel Islands don't experience eggs that break at the same rate or frequency as Audacity, even though they basically are sharing the same ecosystem. So he thinks maybe it's just something that could be specific to her, or maybe there are contaminants in the environment like the remnants of DDT, and she is particularly sensitive to that. We know it sucks for Audacity. I mean, she tries. And when they're able to incubate an egg and her and Jack and hatch an egg, then, well, they have really great nesting success. But it's been a tough go for her really since like 2021 or so. Eagle digestive systems also, and their excretory systems, I mean, they're pretty tough. They eat a lot of stuff that passes through them. So I don't think eggshells necessarily are going to be a problem for Audacity. If there's a partial egg that's stuck fairly high in her reproductive tract, she may be able just to reabsorb that calcium, which wouldn't be the worst thing for her. But yeah, thanks for that question. I'm sorry I can't really fully answer that. I can only maybe speculate on what's going on. But yeah, hopefully we'll be able to ask Erin that question and others during our April 15th program. Now, we also must not forget how close bald eagles came to extinction in the contiguous 48 states, nor the dedication of people past and present who worked and continue to work for a future that includes eagles and other wildlife. So let's increase our own dedication and commitment to ensure that the future is filled with eagles and other wild birds. Brian, you heard Erin mention and talk about the election right now to name the female eagle at the West End. What are the nominated names?
Yeah, definitely. We have 8 names. We have Erin, Cadence, Bonnie, Isla, Ruby, Melanie, Scarlett, and Dawn. So voting is going through tomorrow, March 24. So be sure to vote today. And as you heard in the interview, if you go to iws.org, there's a button right here, right in the center for the Nest Adoption Challenge. And when you go to that page, kind of the same thing, in the center, there's a button for naming the West End female. So definitely check that out today. And we heard Erin talk about the ongoing fundraiser, and I encourage everyone to support if you can. But Mike, we have another special announcement to sweeten the deal, so to speak.
That's right. Yeah, Explore.org and the Institute for Wildlife Studies are launching a 2-to-1 matching fundraiser. So for every dollar donated, Explore.org will donate $2 up to $50,000. If you donated already, don't worry, those donations will count towards the 2-to-1 match. So you can rest assured for that. But also, if you follow us on social media, then you'll also start to see more info about the matching fundraiser this week as well. So that's a way, I think, to strengthen your donation and how far your money can actually go. Later this week, I think on March 27, there will be a special announcement for the fundraiser and matching grant from Explore.org. I'm not going to say what that is, but I will say that it includes something that fans of bald eagles in the Channel Islands will love. So be sure to follow IWS, be sure to follow Explore.org on social media if you are there for information about that.
Awesome. And I have no doubt that the Explore.org community will step up to meet that goal. But Mike, there are plenty of bird nest cams to catch up on, including IWS nests here on this week's Egg Watch.
This is our March 23, 2026 edition of Egg Watch. This is a part of the show where we check on the bird nesting activity of our myriad cams on explore.org. And this update includes many notes for hope, as well as many instances of loss and difficulty, because it is a challenge to reproduce in the wild like all of our birds are doing. And at the Stony Point Nature Reserve in South Africa, we have this amazing opportunity to watch a critically endangered species and bring some hope into the world for the future of this species. So African penguins, they are critically endangered. Both the male and female will incubate eggs, so you see them changing off. And we're not sure how many eggs are in this little nesting burrow here, but they've been incubating since about March 5. And since incubation lasts about 38 days, I think we can look really around the second week of April, starting to watch for chicks to hatch here. Usually they lay 1 or 2 eggs per clutch, and our partner there is Africam and BirdLife South Africa. So I'm looking forward to seeing those chicks in the near future. Let's head back to North America, though, for the moment, and look at what's going on with some peregrine falcons. We didn't have any peregrine falcon nests to include in our last edition of Egg Watch, but we have 2 of them now, starting in Baltimore, Maryland, in the downtown area. Bo and Barb are the birds there, and this building has hosted peregrine falcons since 1978, when a falcon nicknamed Scarlet was introduced to the area. So wild nature is certainly present in cities. If you are a city dweller, you are also surrounded by amazing creatures. So look for those in your urban environments. So there's a single egg that we can see on the cameras, and that egg was laid on March 10, 11, overnight, March 10, 11. But this egg is not being incubated. The female in particular avoids it. And so webcam viewers have noted that there's a new scrape sort of where the bird in this clip is standing right now. And if there's going to be, maybe there's going to be eggs laid there, they're just going to be slightly out of sight. So there's some uncertainty going on here, at least among our sharp-eyed webcam viewers, about whether there's a new female on the territory. So a new Barb. So they haven't named her Barb number 2 or anything like that, but there could be a new Barb on the territory. And if there is a new female and that egg that's currently in the scrape isn't hers, then that would explain why she's ignoring it. So I think we have some more learning to do about what's going on with the Chesapeake peregrine falcons this year. And thanks to the Chesapeake Conservancy again for partnering with us for that view. And then to the mid-continent of North America, Great Spirit Bluff and in Minnesota along the Mississippi River, Elaine and Newman, they have 2 eggs there right now. The first egg was laid on March 19, and the second one came on March 21. So I think we can expect, the hatch for the first egg sometime around April 18 or so, if I did my math right. Incubation usually lasts about 30 days in peregrine falcons. And our partner there is the Raptor Resource Project. Of course, we have our bald eagle nest to check up on. In the Channel Islands region, we'll go there first. At Sauces, it's been a rough go for Jack and Audacity this year. They've been breeding on this territory since 2014. Their first clutch failed. Audacity tried again with the second clutch. Her first clutch had 3 eggs. Her second clutch has had 5 eggs total. All of those eggs in the second clutch broke the same day that they were laid. So really a hard time for her, but we can all admire, I think, the perseverance and audacity, the perseverance and audacity of Audacity herself. So the Fraser Point nest, it's a little less drama filled. And Brian, we're always a little surprised that more people don't watch the Fraser Point nest, because they do so well. They, their eggs seem to be solid. They're incubated well. Their chicks always seem to fledge. So Andor and Cruz are the residents there. This is also on Santa Cruz Island. The last egg in this clutch was laid February 26. So we can expect a hatch here, maybe very late March and very early April. And then on Catalina Island, Chase and Cholin. We were hoping for some better news there, but this is also one of those spots where there's been loss and difficulty experienced over the last few weeks. So Cholin laid 3 eggs in total. All of them broke. The last one broke on March 16, and she hasn't relaid any eggs since then. So I'm not sure if she's going to try again, but she's a very old bird. She's one of the most experienced bald eagles probably on the planet. She is in her mid to late 20s, if I remember correctly. And then the West End nest, we talked about that in our interview with Erin Weiner earlier, with Lee and the unnamed female, soon to be nicknamed female, that is. They laid that 1 egg on March 15, and then it was eaten by a raven on March 16. So our partner, again, for our nests in the Channel Islands is the Institute for Wildlife Studies, thanks to them. And then let's get back to the mid-continent of North America and the bald eagles there. With Decorah at the fish hatchery nest, hatchery dad and hatchery mom number 2. They paired last year, and they have a new nest. This is a nest that has never been used before, number 6 on this territory. They have 2 eggs. The second one was laid on February 21st, and I think we're on hatch watch this week for the first egg, that first egg that was laid on February 17th. So the hatch window for that, I think that first egg should begin tomorrow. So that'll be really exciting to see the first bald eagle to arrive on our cams this year. And then at Decorah North, with Decorah North female and the unknown male there, he still doesn't have a nickname. He's still just known as the unknown male. There's a single egg there that was laid on March 7, but the unknown male, he hasn't been providing any incubation duties. He doesn't seem like he was bonded enough to this nest and to the female and to the egg for the hormones that would really stimulate the incubation need in both males and females. He didn't really quite get that message, so his body wasn't telling him to do it. So DNF has been doing all of the work. It's going to be a difficult challenge for her to get that egg, if it is viable, to get that egg to hatch. But she's making a go at it, and a lot of people are rooting for her. So that egg was laid March 7. The hatch window would begin, I think, mid-April for that egg. And our partner for those 2 cameras is the Raptor Resource Project once again. And one other cam with the Raptor Resource Project. This one is our Canada geese nest in an unoccupied eagle nest in Decorah, Iowa. There are 2 eggs in the nest as of March today, actually. But a lot of things happened over the last couple of weeks. So this female laid 6 of her own eggs. 3 of them broke. And then there was a female goose that shoved her way into the nest on March 22nd and tried to dump her own egg in the nest. That's sometimes a strategy that female geese that don't have their own sort of like nesting spot will do. They'll shove their way into a nest maybe that's unoccupied, or in this case that was occupied, and try to dump a single egg in there. It's a risky endeavor because you don't know if you're the intruder goose, you don't know how long those eggs in the nest have been incubated. So this egg dump wasn't successful. The egg wasn't deposited directly in the nest bowl, and the resident female goose also lost 1 of her eggs in the struggle. So currently there's only 2 eggs in this nest. Eggs are typically incubated for about 28 days. So I think we can expect a mid-April hatch for these eggs here. And then let's go overseas once again to the Philippines, actually, for chick number 32, who is nicknamed Bayani. This is an eaglet that was bred and hatched at the National Breeding Bird Sanctuary of the Philippines. So this is a Philippine eagle. This is, again, a critically endangered species. This bird is currently about 3 months old, and their nickname is the Filipino word for hero. Next steps for this bird includes being moved to a new pen where they can experience the outdoor environment. The best time to watch are daylight hours in the Philippines. If you want to check out this bird, you're going to have to, if you're on the East Coast like me, you're going to have to maybe be up in the middle of the night. So I think in the local Philippines time, it's like 0800 to about 1800 hours. That's plus 8 hours UTC. So I think maybe 12 hours ahead of the Eastern time zone where I am. And our partner for that camera is the Raptor Research Project and the Philippine Eagle Foundation. So really great live look into some critically endangered birds. And then finally, for maybe the longest egg watch we've had so far this year at Patagonia Azul Provincial Park in Argentina, we're still watching our southern giant petrels. They are actually fledging right now. So they stay in the nest a long time, more than 100 days, sometimes upwards of 132 days. But they hatched around Christmas, and they're starting to leave the nesting area in colony now. So fledging very late March and early April happening right now with the southern giant petrels. So more eggs are on the way, including more falcons, ospreys we can expect later this year. So lots of opportunities to learn, to find hope, and also to find that how well birds can persevere through the difficulties that they experience. So you can watch these and other nests every day on explore.org.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. This is definitely the longest egg watch of the year so far, and it's only going to get even more. But let's switch gears a little bit here and get our update from our friends at Africam.
If you've ever watched the live cameras and noticed that mysterious white foam by the waterholes, you've been seeing the foam nest frog in action, and it's pretty incredible. From October to February, it's mating season, and the males set up their dating spots in trees hanging over the water, usually right after a rain. Then they start their serenade, calling out like tiny froggy cupids, hoping to catch the attention of a lady frog. When a female is interested, she moves in. One lucky male clasps onto her, and the magic begins. The female releases a special secretion, and suddenly it's a frenzy. Other males jump in, all competing for the best position to fertilize her eggs. As they kick their legs in the foam, the mixture starts to churn, forming that signature white frothy nest. Once the foam is ready, the female deposits up to 1,200 eggs right inside, and the male fertilizes them while still holding on. The result? A perfectly protected nursery floating over the water, keeping the eggs safe, moist, and ready for when the rain eventually washes the tadpoles into the pools below. So that white foam isn't just bubbles. It's a masterpiece of nature, crafted by tiny frogs with an incredible strategy for survival. Next time you see it on the live cameras, you'll know exactly what's going on. And it's definitely worth a closer look.
Well, that was really neat. I would love to see some of those frogs when I have the opportunity to travel to South Africa. So hopefully I'll get that chance someday. Amphibian reproduction is tied to water, although as we just learned, the foam nest frogs game the system. They create their own water-rich microenvironment for their eggs. So that's an impressive adaptation of behavior and chemistry to keep your eggs moist so the embryos inside can develop properly and stay safe from aquatic predators. Other types of amphibians avoid predation by breeding in places where there are no fish, such as vernal pools. The hiccup is that these pools are ephemeral, and they often dry up in summer. So tadpoles and salamander larvae must complete their aquatic life stages before their watery home disappears. Frogs, toads, salamanders in my area of North America are still dormant under snow and ice, but the springtime amphibian migration has already begun in areas farther south. They risk everything to reach their breeding pools, and here's how that plays out in my neighborhood.
A cool, rainy evening in April or May is weather that a lot of people avoid. It saturates clothes and footwear and can bring about hypothermia in the unprepared. But this is when the silence of winter is broken and spring takes hold. In my neighborhood of northern Maine, the first rainy evenings in spring trigger a mass migration of frogs and salamanders, all of whom seek success in a short yet frenzied breeding season. They seek to reproduce in vernal pools, those ephemeral, shallow puddles and small ponds that fill with springtime snowmelt and rainwater. I seek the opportunity to observe and enjoy the company of some of my usually inconspicuous neighbors. When the weather is right, I head outside shortly after dusk to walk my local road. I might find a few dozen individual amphibians moving toward their breeding ponds on busy evenings. Along the way, I marvel at their determination. This can be a long journey through forest and thicket, and over roads and across ditches for small frogs and salamanders. I'm fortunate to live on a quiet road, but cars and trucks are a significant hazard for animals. Since amphibians are particularly vulnerable on roads, I'm happy to lend them a hand so they don't have to play a real-life game of Frogger. I also count the number of amphibians I see, note their location, and submit that data to a community science project called the Maine Big Night. In my community, few events signal the return of spring more than the amphibian migration. And certainly, the chorus of spring peepers is a true harbinger of the season. The springtime migration of my amphibian neighbors showcases their great commitment to their life tasks, and their arrival on rainy evenings signals an awakening of the landscape.
Well, unless you have no choice or avoid driving on excuse me. Yeah, so unless you have no choice, please avoid driving on rainy evenings when air temperatures are at or above 40 degrees Fahrenheit, about 5 degrees Celsius, anywhere in the Northeast or Midwest US or Southeast Canada at this time of the year. So March, April, May. Amphibians are exquisitely vulnerable to traffic on roads. So a spring peeper on a road closely resembles a pebble. You just can't really see them when they're driving. Road mortality can be so high in certain places that it effectively eliminates breeding amphibian populations. So amphibians, they risk everything. Some of these salamanders, some of these spotted salamanders may be traveling upwards of a quarter mile or more to their breeding ponds. So that's an arduous journey for them. And when they come back out of the ponds, you can see how ragged they are from the breeding that they had to do in the ponds. So they're hungry, they're vulnerable, going into the ponds, coming out of the ponds, and they don't have a choice. We have choices, though. We can design roads with amphibians in mind, and importantly, we can modify our individual habits, such as limiting when and how much we drive, so that some of our smallest vertebrate neighbors are given a better chance to follow their instincts and find success.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. And as we wrap up our show today, we do have a bunch of other upcoming events this week and next, starting with our regular shows. Every Tuesday, we have the AfriCam show. So if you feel like going on a live virtual safari. And of course, Thursdays, we have our Wild Moment show, seeing all the best clips from the AfriCam cameras. And then we have some new events. March 25 at 2 p.m. We have a play-by-play, our first one of the season with Raptor Resource Project. We'll be talking about bald eagles and the Peregrine Falcons. And on April 1, we have our second sandhill crane migration play-by-play. So if you missed the first one, definitely check out the replay of that one. And of course, April 6th will be our next episode of More to Explore. And we'll talk about it more the next episode, but as Mike mentioned, we will be doing a play-by-play with the Institute for Wildlife Studies on April 15. So we're going to leave you here with our nesting pair of the West End Nests, who've been so gracious to stick around for the whole episode. But thank you everyone for joining us today. And of course, I want to give a special thank you to the moderators and camera operators for all the magic that they make happen. And of course, my co-host Mike Fitz for joining me. And join us again next time for another episode of More to Explore, again on April 6th. And until then, happy exploring.